because it gives such a background of where we were and where we can go. Secondarily, you know, I look back at my own life, talk about pathways. You know, I used to come here with my father. My father worked for PSE&G, and he was an electric and gas inspector. So on weekends, he would take me along with him, and I went into all these plants and facilities. Now they'd arrest him. But back then, that was normal. Why is that important? Well, because that's pathways, and that's something that I'm going to talk a little bit about and go to. First of all, I just want to tell you a little bit about what NJMEP is, because I don't think a lot of people do know what we are. Many people think we're an association. We're not. You can work with us if your NAICS code, your national code, as a business says you manufacture. And when Don says about 10,000, we actually know 10,552, because industrial mechanical engineers are much more astute than chemical engineers. Ah, crap, he left. But it's very true when we talk about this thing. So NJMEP's been around for 21 years. We are part of a program that's national. The great thing about this program is that our mission is to support manufacturers and STEM companies in New Jersey. And that's critical because it isn't happening anywhere else. We have a staff of about 25 professionals full-time that are out and about meeting with those 10,000 plus companies. We also have 70 New Jersey experts that we draw upon. We're not given any money from anybody. We have to earn our money. Even though we have a cooperative agreement with the federal government, we have to sell our services to earn down that. We did for a couple years, I believe, Senator Singer, you know, from got some state money, but that didn't last long, and it's long gone. So a program that was structured to be one-third, 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 one-third state, one-third federal, one-third private sector, doesn't have that. At the same time, we've thrived. We've thrived because we have a tremendous staff and we have the ability to go into companies and help them. We consult with them, we train them. You talk about training, you know, and education. In the last 13 years, we've done 16,000 days of training. 170 New Jerseyans, 170,000 New Jerseyans. So we're just a piece of the puzzle. So are the Voc technical schools, so are the county colleges, and so on. You know, Senator, you mentioned that we were instrumental in pushing towards this, and actually it comes from Frank Robinson and myself having a conversation about 2 years ago. He told me that we used to have a manufacturing caucus in New Jersey and it went away. That sort of sounded a little silly to me, but it went away. So we started planning on how we could bring it back, and there was a couple things, and you'll see some of them in the folder we gave to you. The Operation Outreach, where our advisory board, made up of 100% manufacturers, created a letter, and they talked about the things that were driving them crazy. And it wasn't a demanding letter, it was a letter to ask for a new conversation. And it was signed by eventually it was signed by almost 600 companies. The copy that you have is the 475 that were there at the State of the State events. And then with Frank's help, NJBIA's help, we created the State of the State events, where we had two. I know there was a couple of you that made it, which was great, but we had over 300 manufacturers, we had over 60 legislators, and we had a discussion about the industry and where we need to go. So let's just take a look at some of the things to tie in a little bit differently than when Don came. And I'm not obviously going to read all of this because it doesn't really make sense to do that. And it's more of insulting when somebody usually puts up a presentation and reads every slide to you. But one thing I want to talk to you about is that average annual compensation of $90,000 a year. That comes from the National Association of Manufacturing, not from John Kennedy. That's a pretty good number. And did you know that, you talk about health benefits and education benefits? Most manufacturers, higher than any other industry, provide them. Here's the sectors, and we took this directly from the NJDOL. And if you look at it, manufacturing, those are the firms, the employees, the dollar impacts in billion, and the average wage. Now, we don't separate life sciences. For some reason, the DOL does. I'm not really sure because they manufacture and they're critical to our industry. STEM and technology, not all of them are involved in manufacturing, but they're all involved in creating a higher level of work output from New Jersey, and many of them are doing CAD/CAM design and so on. TLD is transportation, logistics, and distribution. Why is that critical? That's the supply chain. And when we talk about supply chain, as Don said, it's evolving. But everything is about supply chain. New Jersey is a supply chain state. So, Assemblyman Zwicker, you made a comment, what comes next and why, it's important that we have all facets of that supply chain. And you'll see in a later slide that where it comes together is because you can't just do this in a vacuum. You can't have a Merck in a vacuum. There's a lot of pieces that go into that. And look at that impact. To me, that's the manufacturing sector in New Jersey. It's a hell of a lot bigger than you thought it was. I love tourism in New Jersey, boy, my whole life. Growing up and heading down to the Stone Pony was real important to me. But you know what? This is more important. These are some of the things that we put together on the, for the state of the state. The first one is looking at it by district. So what I wanted to show was that every district in the state has a manufacturing input. Every single one. I think it's District 33 that has the lowest. I think there's 71 companies that we could earmark, 2,500 people. But thinking about that times 4. That's fairly significant when you're talking about times 4. And that's the multiples that's critical. At the bottom, yeah, it's 360,000 people making $90,000 a year in the state, but 1.8 million of us are tied into the manufacturing industry in some way. Critical. Here's the federal layout, and I did this because what you should know is that even though we're split, we have, as a political operative, I make an excellent engineer. People ask me what party I believe in, and I say Bull Moose. Mainly because I like the logo. But we have Democrats and Republicans in federal. Every one of them vote and support MEP and manufacturing in New Jersey. Every single one. Here's the answer, a little bit with Assemblyman Zwicker. Here's some of the things that when I talk about it. Here's some of the pieces that go together there, guys. When we're talking about what we do, all of these components help make us a better, stronger state. Now, first of all, food's a little outlier because food's regional, but it's growing in New Jersey quite a bit. But all these other pieces, that's part of the supply chain. So when you talk about a pharmaceutical manufacturing company, there's also machinery that they have to put together. That's critical. All of these pieces come to line up. And when Don, I know, and Don and I talk a lot about this, what he failed to mention was one of the programs and areas that we're working on quite a bit, DoD spending. There's a tremendous amount of DoD spending, and there's over 1,000 companies in New Jersey that do some sort of DoD manufacturing. We get 51 cents on a dollar back from our tax money that goes to DC. 51 cents. We are last in the nation. And one of the reasons we're last in the nation is we haven't been able to build a cluster strong enough to attack. You look at Maryland, I can give you a an organizational chart for Maryland going after DOD work. They have about 15 people that work for Maryland just doing that constantly. We have 0. We have a retired general who gives his time. But yet, we don't go after that. And you're talking about this is high-end, high-level, high-paid, high-wage work. Advanced manufacturing. I'm glad Don explained it the way he did because I have no idea what the heck it is. I have 4 college degrees, I don't know. I really don't, because you go into manufacturing plants, it's not what you make, it's how you make it. And the manufacturing company that I owned in Irvington that was all hand machined at one point in time, most of it, my partner who moved it to Harrison, it's all CNC. CNC is that computerized numeric control machines. That's the way it's moved. That's the way it's evolved. And that's why it's so, critical. Sometimes I look at these things and I take them and I wonder who's really looking at them. You quote the McKinsey report and it's excellent. There's Deloitte reports, there's all sorts of others, there's an Upjohn report. The problem is it really doesn't get down because most of them don't understand the industries fully that they're talking about. So it's really easy to say, well, advanced manufacturing. Ask the next person that says that comment, ask them to define it for you. You'll get different answers. So how can it be a great buzzword if you get different answers? This is one that interests me because you can go into just about every manufacturing plant and they have some function of advanced manufacturing. And if I ask the people in this room and probably on the panel, how many of you would say 3D printing? Right? 3D printing, because we've heard about that. That's all the, guess what? 99.9% of the companies don't use 3D printing yet. It doesn't work. It's a really cool technology, but it doesn't work. It doesn't. It's good for fast prototyping. You try putting out 10,000 pieces of metal because you have a business to run. Right. Will it evolve to that? Yes. Eventually it will. But it's not there yet. But CNC work is. And those are the jobs that we cannot fill people. Interestingly enough, I do an annual survey where I ask, what job can't you fill and how many people do you need? And this year's I only cite the first 24 hours. Peter and I, our marketing director, we got it out on a Friday because we've been really busy with State of the State and everything else. And we got it out, and I came in on Sunday morning and there was 840 responses on a weekend. And of those 840 responses, that led to people needing 5,005 people this year. Now you would think that when you talk about manufacturing that it's only somebody that's running a machine, right? That's manufacturing. That's a manufacturing business. Well, the number one is technical sales. They can't fill a technical sales job. Can't sell it. No reason to build it. Engineers in the top 5. Cost accountant is in the top 5 because remember, these are businesses. And of course, CNC machinists, programmers, welders, all of these things are important to these industries. And I was at an event yesterday that we were talking about things. I think I saw you there, Tony. And the one thing that I went up and I asked the guy from McKinsey, or, he was speaking about it, and he said, skilled positions, semi-skilled positions, and non-skilled. I said, what makes somebody a skilled position? College degree. Try hiring a degree of somebody that has a humanities degree to work in a manufacturing company. It's not exactly the skill set they're looking at. So that's why when we look at this stuff, there's a lot of skewing to it. And I love what Don said, because you shouldn't look at your career as 18, I have to go to college. and 22, I have to get a job. How many of you are in the same careers that you started at age 22? I'm not. You know, I wanted to be an engineer and a manufacturer, and it took me years to get there, you know. But my first dream job is I wanted to play for the Yankees. I did get drafted out of college, but that was by Detroit, so that didn't really help me. Life sciences cluster. Why is this important? It's critical to New Jersey. And the program that Don mentioned, where we went after, and we were on their team, and Rutgers was as well, and so was Stevens, we went after, and we lost out to Delaware, and we were told that it was political choice. Okay, fair enough, not fair, but fair enough. But the difference is, as he said, we fought for $4 million of support to create an institute, a leader, a center of excellence in New Jersey, and we fought to get $4 million. Massachusetts has invested $150 million over the last 3 years in these institutes. If you look at any, and this hurts me because that's where the Red Sox are, if you look at any state that we compare tremendously to, it's Massachusetts, in size, in education, in home values, all of these things. And yet, they're willing to invest in an industry, we're not. And we wonder why we lose some of these things. I did want to show you this because, again, when you talk about these clusters and things, when you talk about life science, it's not just drug companies. It's just not pharmaceuticals. Medical device companies are critical, and they're working very hard in New Jersey, quite a few of them. And when Don put up those, you know, I'm going to steal that from him one day so he can't put those, the companies that left, they're gone. I can't change that. But the 10,552, I want them there. I want you looking at companies like Amnium and Tris Pharma and Triangle Manufacturing and Murata Controls and someday Shock Tech, because we're getting them from New York State. So you have to look at these industries as a whole. Logistics, right? It's real important. I think we're the perfect place to go. But we're right, if there's no other thing here except for, you know, trucks coming through, then what's the value in the long run? I'm all for getting Amazon, but, you know, are we set up and we ready to have these companies here? The answer is no. Don mentioned something about talking about, you know, his kids coming through. And I'll tell you, because I've worked a lot over the years with Boy Scouts and other programs, we're not educating our kids as well as we think we are. They're not coming out with mathematics and English skills that make them able to compete. Doesn't mean the kids are smart as hell. We're not educating them. Ambar, you're here. A lot of the county college work is remedial, correct? That comes in? And there's a problem with that because we should be using our county colleges to advance us and to bring them to the next level. I put this slide up because this is the thing that really tweaked me, and when I sold my businesses, the reason why I came to MEP. Because every project we do in New Jersey, we are rated and surveyed by a third party. So when I look at our impacts, these are not impacts from NJMEP, these are impacts from a third party. And these are the impacts that we've had since the year 2000. By the end of the year, I expect us to jump over 30,000 jobs. We are, for the last 7 quarters, the #1 MEP in the country. There's 51 of us, Puerto Rico as well. And yet we don't take advantage of what we have. You're going to hear from Judy Savage on the VOTEX. I think it's important that we invest and grow with these VOTEX. Ambar is here from the County College Consortium. That's all wonderful. Don Sebastian. But we don't run these things like businesses. We don't oversee the program. You asked about apprenticeships. There's no investment in apprenticeships. Every program that we have requires companies to hire people. That sounds wonderful in the real world, but it's not real world. You guys that have been in business understand that companies don't hire people because they're trained. They're hired because they need them. And we have to figure this out. But if we have 840 companies that have 5,005 needs in the next year, I'll bet you they didn't fill half of those jobs. One of the things I put in there, and I've discussed with Senator Gordon, is a program that we developed looking at a variety of different states and how they do it better than we do. And believe me, being a New Jerseyan, I hate to say somebody's doing something better than we do. You know, I'm actually proud of being here, growing up here. I have the same phone number my whole life. I lived in Madison when it was blue collar. Not anymore. But part of with that is talking about how we need to have a structure so that it works, a business structure, so that we enhance what the county colleges are doing, we enhance what the technical schools are doing, and we tie things together so that the industry is eventually paying for these things. They don't want to pay for them now because they don't trust in what's coming out. If you ask manufacturers, they will tell you that they cannot bring in people because they don't have basic math skills and they don't have basic English skills. And this isn't talking about inner city. I had a young man who was one of my Eagle Scouts, National Merit Scholar. Got him a summer job. A friend of mine called me up and said, "John, I gotta fire Raj." I said, "Why is that?" He's one of the brightest kids I know. He can't do math without a calculator or a cell phone. You know? When you're on a plant floor, you have to think. And as proud as I am that I just read that we're number 2 in the country in high school graduation rates, that's not true in Newark, or Patterson, or Trenton, or Asbury Park, Atlantic City. Are the kids dumber there? No. They don't have pathways. And that's the point that I want to leave you with today, is that pathways are important. When I was a teenager, my father died suddenly. And I was an angry young man. Now, we didn't have much money. My mother was a checker. I don't know how she kept our house. Really don't. That's why she's my hero. But the point of the story is I had my mother and I had 2 scout leaders who gave a damn about me and talked to me about pathways and pushed me towards pathways. And luckily I could play baseball, and I had 3 jobs, and I graduated college for the first time with 11 cents left to my name, literally. I still have that bank, you know, the first agricultural bank of North Adams, and I have it. He went to Williams. But, you know, and I have that framed because I made it. Didn't matter what I had, I made it. But what I really made was I had a pathway. I had people that were mentoring me. I spoke down in Trenton not too long ago to a group of the My Brother's Keepers program, which I thought was wonderful down there. And I had kids coming up to me. One kid won a state science medal. And he said, "Hey, Mr. K, I can pump gas or work at Starbucks without a high school graduation. What's the big deal?" Here's a kid that won the state science medal. And I thought he was kidding. He wasn't, because he saw no pathway. We have to provide pathways, and we have to provide that. And I believe that this industry manufacturing and STEM is that pathway to a better life. Yep, I'm biased. But from that 11 cents, I own 2 successful businesses, a manufacturing company and an engineering company, and I was able to make something that my mother, my father, and those 2 scout leaders could be proud of. These are the important factors. So that's where I'll leave you, except for a little bit of manufacturing debt. See, Lenore, she won't get mad at me, because that's our event that's coming up. Last year we had 1 person from the assembly show, so we do hope that, of course you were voting on this tax for the gas tax, so we'll forgive you there, but that's it. Thank you.